southern tip of Manhattan is still called the Battery. Battery is a word that can mean a grouping of guns or cannons. The U.S. Coast Guard has relocated. If you've got good eyes, you see that's what it says on the blue sign on the beige rectangular building right before the ferry terminals. As we slow down for some construction again, I'm going to ask you to look between the Coast Guard building and the empty ferry terminals. I'm trying to point out a small church. Red brick church, white steeple with a gold cross on top of it. It's only a few stories tall. Might seem like a small thing for me to try to point out on a tour of very big things, but that's why I like to point it out if I can. That church was built in 1790, and when it was, that church steeple was the tallest thing on Manhattan Island. Amazing to imagine that today as we look at this skyline here. But even more amazing is that church steeples were the tallest thing on Manhattan Island for another 90 years after. There was nothing over 5 stories tall on Manhattan Island until we began construction on the big brown bridge up ahead, the world-famous Brooklyn Bridge. We're going to sail right under the Brooklyn Bridge. We've left the harbor behind. We're on the East River. Now, the Brooklyn Bridge was completed in 1884, 2 years before the Statue of Liberty. Imagine nothing over 5 stories tall on this island. At the time of its construction, on the right, Robert Fulton was docking his steam-powered ferry. That was a new invention. Brooklyn Heights was becoming the first commuter suburb of New York. On the left, the Manhattan shore would have been lined by tall sailing ships. The ships would have been taller than the buildings. They would have obscured our view of the skyline behind them. And in fact, if you look up ahead at the South Street Seaport, you'll see 3 masts on one tall sailing ship. That's the last one here down in Pier 16. But imagine ships like that lining the shore, and the sailors on top of those ships all through the 19th century, they would have referred to the highest mast on their sail ship as the skyscraper. That word comes from nautical slang, and New Yorkers only started applying it to buildings when the buildings started being taller than the sailing ships. They said,